Welcome back, everyone, to the Awful Takes podcast album review.
I know, it's been a while, too.
We've been doing a couple of these. It has been a while. How we kind of structure these, for those of you guys who are first joining us, we break down our recommendations by each song. We don't give an overall score just because music can be very personal and very unique to a certain person, more so than something like movies or television. And opinions can change very drastically. You know, you could be in the saddest mood of your life one day and you really connect with music. And you could be in the happiest mood and you connect with different types of music, you know? And I just feel like trying to encompass all that in a score doesn't really make sense for me.
Right.
However, with music, what we try to do is break down each song and at the end, give kind of like a 3-4 song suggestion of like, if you're going to check this out, listen to these 4 songs. If you like them, listen to more. I feel like that's a cool way to kind of do it. Of each album kind of has its own standpoints, you know, of things that are worth checking out. Wallied, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so we got a very polarizing album. It's one of my favorites of 2022. It is called I Love You, Jennifer B by a duo called Jockstrap. Yes, that's their name. And basically, to give a bit of context, Jockstrap is a duo of Georgia Ellery, who is a violinist for another band that I love very much that I want to talk about someday, Black Country New Road. She does a lot of the violin work, and she's been doing some backup vocals and singing recently for the band. And an electronic producer named Taylor Sky, who's had a bit of just a mix of doing remixes, and this is kind of like his most famous work. And yeah, this was an album that I kind of had found out through Black Country New Road because, again, the main member is in that band and everything. And so I was kind of curious to kind of see what it would be like outside of the band, you know, because their sound is a lot different compared to this album. Their sound is very much like wooden instruments, a lot of like classical kind of like post-rocky, very distorted kind of sounds and everything. So hearing this album was a lot different. You know, it's a lot of a mix of like electronic music, a lot of experimental music, a lot of mixed in with like a lot of pop harmonies and a lot of like classical moments. And so when I heard the album for the first time, it was actually through the song Concrete Over Water, which I'll get into, which is one of the most mind-blowing songs that I've ever heard. And I'm still like trying to wrap my head around how do you even make a song like that? And so, yeah, it gave me more interest to listen to the album, and I gave the album a listen, and I was kind of shocked with just the different places it was going into. And lyrically, it was just kind of like a melancholic, kind of somewhat love story that you get throughout the album that we'll get into also. So, Nabahi, what was kind of your experience kind of with this?
I had no idea about any of these artists.
Right.
Even now, while you're just talking about it, like I'm learning with whoever else is learning it. But I will say, the idea of side projects is something that I always love when my favorite artists do something that's so drastically different that you can't really kind of package it in something that we're used to. So they have to step outside of that and be like, you know what? We're kind of starting fresh, and this is something new, and this is something that doesn't really encompass what I've done before. You know, I love it when artists take that bold step in kind of starting fresh, you know, and what you get is like the unhinged version of themselves because they don't have any ties to anything, you know.
Right.
If anything, they do bring in certain tricks and different things that they've learned, but usually what you get is such a drastic step forward or to the side that you can't help but be in awe of like, wow, they're also capable of this, you know. Like I love that. I love it when artists do that. So hearing Wallied mention that really just kind of makes me appreciate this more. I hadn't heard of it, put it on, and you are taken for a ride with this thing. This is unlike anything you have probably heard before. Very kind of melancholic, very low key, you know, but it's not afraid to get aggressive at some points. It's not afraid to amp things up a bit. And what you get is like a very strange blend of everything. And by the end of it, you're just like, wait a minute, what did I listen to? You know, which is really cool. Obviously, leaving music and getting to that point of like, wait a minute, how was this done? What was the ideas behind it? I love when I have those questions about certain things, you know? So overall, it was just quite the listen for the first time.
Nice. Yeah. And the crazy thing too with this also is like, it's a debut album also. So this is like their first album. They've released like a handful of like short EPs, 2018 to 2020. So this was kind of like their debut project basically. And it's still like shocking to me that like, this is like a debut album, you know? So yeah, we can get into the first track and everything. So the first track is called Neon. And right away, you already just have like an idea of like what you're somewhat in for, you know, the way it starts out, it's very minimal with like this acoustic guitar and everything. And then just like, once the track just blows up, it's just like a big shock and jump and surprise of like, whoa, holy cow. Like this is taking it to like another level and everything like that. And I just love how it gets more chaotic and like distorted throughout, you know? And then I love the lyrics of how like self-destructive, this kind of like self-destruction, it like fits with what the song, with just the instrumental and everything. And it gives you an idea of this kind of like character and everything that you hear throughout the album. So what was kind of your thoughts on that first track and everything?
I love the simplicity in the opening. And when the drums and bass kind of kick in, it's apparent, but it's still really restrained, you know? It sounds very, it's kind of obviously jarring. You hear it kind of come in, but it's still like kind of holding back. And then obviously the bridge build up kind of lets loose, you know? And I specifically wrote, it sounds like you're being driven into madness with all the fuzz and everything, you know? So yeah, overall, the first track just really kind of has a very finite statement of this is it, this is the sound, this is what it's going to be like.
This is kind of who we are also, you know?
Which is obviously big. Again, like you're starting fresh, and to put the first track, you kind of need to make those statements, you know? You need to put something that isn't going to be able to be misinterpreted.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I think also it fits perfectly, even with the self-destruction of the lyrics and everything. It also kind of just shows how like caring too she can be. It's like these kind of like two sides of like her personality and everything like that. And I really appreciate that. It kind of shows you that in like the intro track and everything. And so, yeah, just a very awesome intro. I love this intro very much. It's one of the coolest intros I've heard in a while. And so we get to the second track, and this is Jennifer B. And this kind of also kind of shows you more into that melancholic side of like love and everything like that. And it has like this really polarizing like instrumental. It's like a broken dance track I put here. It's like a glitch in like in the DJ system or something. I don't know what it is. I don't know how they made it or how Taylor made it. I'm just like, how do you make something like this? And it kind of leans more into that kind of like first type of like love story of like she's finding kind of somewhat love in a club, kind of like a brat type of thing that she'll kind of like do anything for love at that point, you know? And so, yeah, it's a kind of nice, different transition into what you kind of first heard from like that first track and everything. So, yeah, and then this is one that's just kind of like, you feel kind of confused. At least I felt kind of confused when I first heard it and everything. But this was one that definitely like grew on me more and more. So how'd you kind of take this one away?
Some of the notes I made with this one. So it sounds like producer, whoever, opened up their laptop, kind of connected their little MIDI keyboard or, percussion pad. And, you have your library of sounds and things. And I felt like whoever the producer was just grabbed sounds from each different library and just kind of threw them all together on his sample board and just kind of let loose. Obviously, I like that a lot. I love the kind of chaotic nature of it. Could be a little polarizing for some people trying to find some resemblance of like
a melody
or a song. So maybe they might not get us into it, but obviously for me, that was kind of my first notice with it. Was I was just like, dude, this guy's going insane with these sounds. He's pulling from probably every library he has. And I really appreciated that. But the vocals kind of provide a nice throughway through all like the chaoticness.
Yeah, you know? Her vocals are just super heavenly throughout. I love her voice so much. You know, she has so much emotion and kind of softness to. It's oddly comforting, like when you're listening to it, you know, and I really love that a lot about her voice. It's like, man, she should do more vocals for Black Country New Road. I'm like, God dang, you know?
Yeah.
Really polarizing track, one that might take a little bit to get into, but I still really enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we get into the third track, and this is one of my personal favorites from the album. I believe it's actually one of their more popular songs, actually. It's Greatest Hits, which I'm waiting for that Greatest Hits compilation at some point. But yeah, fantastic instrumental all around. I love that like little awesome sampling of like the I love that. And then like that kind of progression that it leads into and everything, where it becomes kind of more like hi-fi kind of sounding, you know, because at first it's kind of like a bit lo-fi at points, and I really love that. And then lyrically, it's just fantastic. I love that kind of like these kind of like dream sequences that she kind of sings about, and like kind of using the greatest hits as like a compilation of like memories you've had with like a person, you know, and that you've had with like your first time love, whether that be, you know, friendship love or like a relationship love. I think it's a really awesome comparison to kind of show. And it's like, that is true. You know, when you are in a relationship, you have these like greatest hits of like a series of memories that you kind of have throughout your life and everything. And it just shows you like just how personal and close they become with this person with this series of greatest hits and everything. So how'd you kind of feel with this one?
Yeah, no, this one was great. Like Wallied said, the progression of it, the feeling that kind of evolves throughout the track is just amazing. And then from a productions kind of standpoint, to just kind of have a change, you know, that for me in this instance feels organic. You know, I think that's something that I appreciate. I know sometimes in music, and especially kind of one track songs that do kind of evolve, sometimes it could be a little too jarring to where I'm like, it feels kind of like two different songs,
right? Yeah.
But this one feels really cohesive, and that's a big challenge. I don't want to underestimate that at all. It evolves in such a organic type of way, and then just the vocals are just top notch, and they just add that kind of final level to the production and everything. Really enjoyed this one. This was definitely one that is going to be on my recommended.
Nice. Heck yeah. Awesome. All right. And then for the next track, we get into What's It All About, which is one of the more emotionally hard-hitting songs on the album, for me at least. And just already it just is so melancholic. I love just this kind of like balladry type of song. You know, it's like everything you've heard throughout, it's just like you never expect where it's going to go and everything. And I just love the lyrics of this song. It's just like this feeling of like the reality of the relationship. It's just like, it's just kicking in, and it's like slamming you like a truck, you know, for me. And the last lines of the song are just easily just some of my favorite on this album. And the instrumental is just hauntingly beautiful, especially when those like melodic like synths come in and everything. For me, it's probably my favorite song on the album. So how did you kind of feel about this one?
Yeah. Obviously, while it is the vocals do have that kind of laid back feel, the emotion still it comes through very, very well. Especially in the deliveries and everything. The whole idea of like being in a retrospective view on something, it can be hard, you know? And I think a lot of times that's where we can mess up. You know, anytime we're past a finite point in your life where you can take that moment and be like, let me kind of look back at everything. that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And I feel like this song conveys that very, very well. Obviously the whole idea, the line of the track, what's it all about? You know, that's big. And overall, this is definitely one that really kind of stuck with me.
Nice.
Yeah, this was a great track.
It's almost too also of like this feeling of like nostalgia, you know, you're taking a look at everything that's happened, you know, and you see like the good, but you also kind of just see like the bad of the relationship and everything. And it just conveys it so perfectly in a way that I'm like, I don't know. I can't think of another song that's done that so well for me as much as this one has. And I just appreciate it so much. The singing obviously is just absolutely phenomenal from start to finish and everything like that. And I love the way the just track ends and everything. And so, yeah, that kind of transitions us to our next track, Concrete Over Water, which is one word I can describe it as is mind-blowing. The way it progresses and everything, you're trying to figure out where it's going to go. And then once this instrumental chorus hits, it's like, it puts me in this just like trance of like, holy cow. It feels like you're going at like 200 miles per hour and everything. And man, it is, I don't even think I have words to describe it. I'll let you take over, Nabahi.
The notes I had for this, which is something that we have mentioned on some of the other songs. The keys and everything in this sound really haunting. Sounds just super like, what am I listening to? But the dynamic with the voice, like Wallied mentioned earlier, is very comforting, you know? So you're kind of in this middle zone of like, wait a minute, like, whoa, this is, like Wallied said, it's kind of mind blowing, you know? And then at the middle point of the song, there's like this break, and then it kind of changes scope, you know, and really overall just feels very poignant, and it hits you. And I just was left like, wow, that was something that I can't really describe. You know, you really just have to like listen to it just to know what we're kind of talking about. Overall, that was something that I was not really ready for, but definitely want to re-listen to this one a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And it's crazy too. The song is like 6 minutes, and it's just like the pace of the song is just like, wow, you don't even feel like the runtime or anything, you know, because sometimes songs that are like a bit more lengthier and like kind of like 6-10 minute range can be kind of hit or miss at times. But man, this is like, takes it to like another level and everything. I'm like, wow, you know, it is still surprising you even by the end and everything like that. But just like the little glitch, like vocal samples, things at like the end, it's like, whoa, holy cow, you know? And so, awesome track. That's easily one of my favorites for sure. And so then we get to the next track. This one, I really liked the classical instrumental of. It's very dark lyrically, and it's kind of this like disturbing portrayal of angst that I've heard in a song in a while. It's almost kind of like this like demon that's just been forming after the last few tracks you've heard, and it's like this kind of puts you in this kind of like downward spiral and everything like that. So what was kind of like your kind of overall takeaway with it?
What am I hearing a harp in this song? I swear that's what I wrote, but I was like, is this like a harp?
It might be.
Whatever it is, it just sounds super left of field to the rest of the stuff we had been hearing. And then it does like these reverse hits and everything, which I'm not normally a big fan of, kind of reversed instruments or anything, but this song, it works really well. Overall, it was just very, very polarizing. Obviously, with the whole angst thing, I kind of was expecting something maybe, you know, with a bit more traditional kind of fuzz or overdrive, you know, but this felt totally opposite to something that you would describe as something that's angsty. So in that way, it did kind of just leave me kind of stunned. I was like, expecting one thing, but I ended up getting another.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great track. Really, really polarizing when you first hear it.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely like one of the more darker sides of the album for sure, you know. So that was also like a big polarizing kind of turn into that. But it's really well done. And so we get to the 7th track, which I think is like pretty good overall. I really dug the chorus on this track and everything. Yeah, this is one I really dig. This one is not one of my personal favorites on the album, but yeah, one just, again, instrumentally, it's still just kind of surprising you and everything like that. So yeah, how did you kind of take this one away?
I don't know with this one. This one might be one of my favorites. Okay, so with the opening, these synths come in, and granted, this doesn't really tie into it too much, but the synths sound like they're out of like Blade Runner. And I don't want to get into a full thing with Blade Runner, but one of my favorite parts about Blade Runner is those kind of synths with the music and everything. Just it's like one of a kind. And when I heard this, I was like, oh, damn, they're going for that. And I really just dug those synths in the beginning. But then it goes for a switch, and these like almost video game kind of keys or something kind of come in, you know, and it just sounds like something straight out of like a video game or something. And it just is like, wait, what? Where is this shift coming from? You know?
And then lyrically too, he has like the whole like press X at the stars thing, and it's just like it's almost this kind of like she's playing this kind of like her life is kind of like a video game at that point, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's very polarizing to listen to, and I do like this a lot, but compared to just some of the other tracks, I'm like, this one is pretty good.
This one definitely had like a groove to it. So I will say, if you're listening to some of the other songs, this one may come off very different than everything else you'd been hearing. But I really liked what this song was going for.
Nice.
This is definitely one that I'd listened to quite a bit after I'd heard the album. Nice. It really just kind of caught me off guard. But yeah, it was good.
That one's called Debra, by the way. Sorry about that. Yes. And then, so we get to the next track here. This one is a lot more folkier compared to, again, everything you've heard on the album. This one's Glasgow. And this one is one of my personal favorites. I think it's a really fantastic ballad. I love the chorus on this one. And I feel like we've been talking about like how the vocals are incredible and everything, but I feel like the vocals really get to shine on this track, you know, because of the more simplistic direction. And it feels like kind of like a more love story type. It's like she's kind of restarting. She's found a more new love with, I'm guessing, this Debra character that we heard on the last track and everything like that. And I also just love that it's like she's having that experience of love and like just like this feeling of like happiness listening to it, especially in like that chorus and everything. How did you feel about this one?
This one was really great for me. In the intro, the beginning, it's like I was trying to guess what I was hearing. Again, it does sound like this harp thing that I had heard before.
Yeah,
it sounded like. So I know how to play guitar very okayly, not good at all. But there's this thing you do with the guitar where if you hit the certain fret points on the neck, and if you're very lightly touching the strings and you hit it, they call it like a harmonic, and it has like this very interesting sound. So I was hearing this kind of harp thing, but then I heard like these harmonics, and I was like, wait, what is that? And then I started hearing the guitar kind of riffing, and I was like, oh, is that like a blend of the two? And it really just kind of blew my mind. But then it jumps from that, and it goes to this more simple kind of guitar chord kind of chucking, you know? And I like that switch a lot. And then that guitar just kind of is pretty evident throughout the rest of the track and just really kind of carries you through this thing. But then some hints still come out of that harp that we had heard maybe a little bit earlier. So overall, I just really love the production by this track. Obviously, the vocals are still really top notch, and the lyrics just they hit. you know, and it feels like a build that like Wallied had mentioned on the song we heard before. And that's one thing, guys, like when you're listening to albums, if you do kind of cherry pick songs, you can miss out on the connectiveness of the album as a whole.
And there's context also too, you know. I see kind of the Debra as like she's kind of experimenting with like a new love, you know.
And I guess maybe that's me personally where we are with music today is it's singles, you know, it's all singles. And I just kind of want to, with us talking about music is kind of draw back to what I know as music is really just listening to albums as a whole, you know, really giving time and appreciation and just sitting down and listening to it. That's one thing I guess I'll say kind of my whole context is to why I love vinyls is because you really can't skip songs. Yeah, well, you can. It's just really freaking hard. But you're kind of forced to kind of sit there and just kind of let it play, you know, let it speak for itself. So that is something with this album that I love is just the connective feel between each track.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this song was great.
And I think as you mentioned, like the guitar thing, you know what I think it might be, honestly? I think it might be Georgia's violin playing, honestly.
Literally, I was like...
It might be. It has to be.
It left me guessing. I was like, what is this sound?
Yeah, I feel like it's her violin playing, and then it's just like Taylor Sky like took it in, pitched and like kind of manipulated it to kind of make it sound like a harp. That would probably be my best guess for that.
Sounds really great.
Yeah, so fantastic ballad, easily one of my favorites on the album. This is one I've always come back to a lot. Really, really great song. And so the next one we get to is Lancaster Court. And this one is kind of a bit more of like a dark, kind of like fantasy-esque kind of song, something you'd kind of hear in like a fantasy film or something like that. And this one is pretty solid. I do like this one. It's not one of my personal favorites on the album. But I kind of see it as like she's in this kind of like dark fantasy that she's kind of had with this this newfound love. It's kind of like the polar opposite of what you just listened to, you know. And it's an interesting contrast between the two tracks, and I kind of really like that kind of dark, almost kind of like sound that it goes for. It's a lot more it's probably the most classical, I would say, on the album and everything. So how did you kind of feel with this one?
I enjoyed it. I will say this was probably one of my least favorites off the album as a whole. It didn't feel too kind of conclusive on the past two tracks we heard. So maybe that's what it was.
Right.
It felt very laid back, which isn't a bad thing. But I just felt like overall I didn't find myself coming back to this one as much. But with Wallied talking about, you know, it being kind of like this fantasy thing, that does intrigue me. So maybe I will need to give this more of a kind of in-depth kind of listen. Overall, it's not bad. I do remember being like, oh, okay. I enjoyed it. I just didn't really find myself itching to listen to it again.
Right on. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, pretty good. Not one of my favorites, but yeah, still one I kind of enjoy if I'm hearing it on the album and everything like that. And then we get to the final track of the album, which is kind of funny. This is the final track of the album, but it's no complaints because I think the song is really great. So we have a 50-50 extended mix. I don't know where the original mix was.
I was about to say, I was like, is there like a original version or something?
It actually was. I believe it was on one of the EPs, or I believe it was one of the singles they had released beforehand, before the album came out. I'm not really sure why the extended mix is on here, but it's still really great nonetheless. And this one it goes back to that more dancey, kind of like club house kind of vibe that it goes for. I definitely feel like it's her kind of having second thoughts on it. You know, she's going to this club with her and everything, you know, and like, you know, that's hence kind of maybe why it's like the extended mix of this, you know, is her maybe like going to this club is like, maybe it's like her first date or whatever, you know, in a while. Wow. So how did you kind of feel with this one?
This one, this like switches up the vibe of everything else you've heard, which isn't a bad thing. I really enjoyed this one. I just felt like I was like, when I saw extended mix, I was just assuming like this was maybe like a bonus track.
I know, I thought that too, but then I heard it in kind of like the context of the album, like, oh, okay, actually this works.
This has like super crazy samples and effects. You got like these hi-hats that just like carry you throughout the song. They sound really cool, really consistent. And yeah, it just totally switches up everything. I wasn't ready for it. Definitely has that kind of dance feel and kind of like club feel, you know.
Right.
Really enjoyed it. So if you're listening to it, definitely this is gonna kind of stand out to you compared to everything else you'd been hearing. I will say, with this album overall in general, really appreciated, really enjoyed. One thing I wish was maybe just a little better is I feel like the engineer or the mixer couldn't find like a finite kind of matching point. A lot of times when these samples and things kind of come in, they feel really left of field and kind of jarring. And I just wish maybe they found a better way to incorporate it into the mix, you know?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily bad or anything, but sometimes like these samples and things just kind of get brought up. Or
it does take you like by surprise. And I kind of felt like maybe that was maybe what they were going for, but I'm not entirely sure.
Sometimes it just can feel maybe a little distracting. And especially if you were listening to this for the first time, you might just be like, what am I hearing? You know? But it's not like I didn't want them to be there. I get why they're there. And I'm like, it works for me. However, I just feel like what I'm just trying to say is just like the mix of it. Just sometimes it kind of overshadowed some of the other aspects of what I was hearing.
Okay. Yeah. I felt like it could have been maybe a little bit more quieter.
Maybe blended just a little better. But who knows? Like you said, maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe it was kind of meant to be like this left of field kind of.
Just like keep you second guessing. That would have been probably my guess. And granted, I've kind of heard a lot of these songs a lot of the time, so many times at this point. So I'm kind of like, that's maybe how I can maybe see a first time listener maybe listening to this. So yeah.
But overall, really enjoyed it. Songs that I'd recommend listening. Obviously, Greatest Hits is one of them. And then the 2-song Debra and Glasgow, definitely check out both of those. So nice. I would say all 3 of those are just something that if you're hesitant on listening to this, check those out. I feel like you'd get a good feel for everything else on the album.
Nice. Yeah. Really great album overall. I'm excited to see what Jockstrap does next. I hope we get more music from them at some point, you know, even if it is a side project kind of thing, you know. Even like at least like a new EP or something would be awesome. Really great blend of like pop and experimental music and dance music and even classical music. And it's like, it surprisingly fits very well with like the overall sound and vibe that it's going for. Georgia Ellery's vocals are just absolutely incredible, and it juxtaposes really well with the instrumentals, I feel like really, really well. And so tracks that I would recommend to you guys checking out, Concrete Over Water, I feel like is a very obvious one. It's one that is just leaves you on the edge of your seat, and by the end you're just like, whoa, what did I just listen to? And then What's It All About is a really fantastic ballad that I recommend to you guys. It's just, man, it really hits hard in every way. And then I would say the first track, Neon, Neon really gives you an idea of what you are in for with the sound and vibe that Jockstrap is going for and everything. And so, yeah, really great album overall. One of my personal favorites of the decade so far. And so, yeah, I'm very curious to kind of see what the future of Jockstrap will be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be it for this album review. We got more of them that we're going to be talking about here in the future.
Yeah.
Let us know if this structure kind of works for you guys of going song by song, and let us know what you think of these recommendations. Because obviously, we kind of put them out there as like, we feel like these are worth listening to.
Yeah, definitely. They feel worthy of like a discussion,
Exactly.
And especially going track by track, I think helps a lot better too.
Definitely. But let us know what you guys think. thank you guys for joining us.
All right. Good day and good night, mates.
We will see you on the next one.